Hi folks, WoodenBoat Dan here. Just wanted to give you a heads up. The podcast you're about to listen to was recorded several years ago, so some of the phone numbers, email addresses, website links, and time-sensitive information are no longer valid. Please keep that in mind as you listen. If you'd like to contact me, my email address is woodenboatdan@gmail.com. Thank you and enjoy the podcast. Thanks for tuning into this very special 100th episode of Hooked on Wooden Boats. This is Dan Matson, your host once again for the 100th episode of HookedOnWoodenBoats.com, the weekly podcast that celebrates the art, craft, history, tradition, and romance of wooden vessels around the world. Well, I hope you're enjoying my special introductory happy birthday music for this 100th episode. It's a pretty special day for me to do 100 of these things. When I first started out, September 22nd, 2011, I did 2 podcasts, and then I thought, well, I guess I'm done. There's nothing else to talk about. Now, 100 episodes later, I am still having a blast, and there's more to talk about than ever with wooden boats, so it's pretty fun stuff. I thought I'd also mention that since I started the podcast a little bit less than 2 years ago, about 23 months ago, there's been over 80,000 downloads of the podcast, so somebody's listening. I guess that's you out there. So thanks for tuning in. I really appreciate it. Well, I debated over what to do for this special 100th episode today. I asked for my listeners' input. I had some of my own ideas. I landed on 2 pretty cool interviews here after kind of looking at all the options. And the first interview today is going to be with Henry LePage. Henry is 8 years old. Last year, at the age of 7, he built his first wooden boat, a Poorboy Skiff. He was featured in the launching section, his boat, of WoodenBoat Magazine number 230. And also he was in the insert of WoodenBoat Magazine 232, the insert called Getting Started in Boats. And there's stories in there about people that are just starting out on wooden boats, and Henry was in there. And the way I get hooked up with Henry is that I listened to the podcast Answer Man, Cliff Ravenscraft, and I interviewed Cliff for the episode today, episode 100, and Cliff played that interview on his podcast, and Henry's dad heard it and contacted me and said, could Henry be on the podcast sometime? He'd like to be on the podcast. I'm thinking, man, that would be awesome. So anyway, first interview, 8-year-old Henry LePage. What a great way to celebrate 100 episodes with an 8-year-old that's as enthusiastic about wooden boats as I am at 28 years old. No, actually, I'm a little older than that. The second interview is with Cliff Ravenscraft. Cliff is known as the Podcast Answer Man, and his website is podcastanswerman.com. And you may be wondering why Cliff is on the show. Well, the answer to that is that in 2009, I began listening to Cliff's podcast where he teaches people how to do a podcast. And through his show, I got encouraged to start my own podcast. And in early September of 2011, I signed up for his online podcasting A to Z course. And that is when I got my podcast launched in September of 2011 with Cliff's help. So I interviewed Cliff, and we had a great time reminiscing about how I got started, recounting some funny stories and that sort of thing. Cliff's an awesome guy. If you have any interest in podcasting, Cliff is the guy to go to. And if you do take his A to Z course and you use the promo code BOATS, BOATS, you get a little discount on the price. So anyway, check it out. So those are the 2 interviews today for this special 100th episode of Hooked on Wooden Boats. So the other cool thing about today, which is the day I publish, this will be August 15, 2013, I am publishing my first ebook called Get in the Wooden Boat Game, A Guide for Building Your First Boat. It is an interactive guide that walks you through some processes and decisions that you have to make before you build your first boat, like how much it's going to cost, how long will it take, the million-dollar question there. What size boat should I build? What style boat? Should I build a rowboat, sailboat, powerboat? What building method should I use? There's a bunch of different building methods: lap strake, strip plank, stitch and glue, to name a couple or three. Should I build a boat from scratch or from a kit or from plans? Anyway, so I walk people through this to help them make a decision about their first boat. There's lots of pictures in the book. They're all pictures that I took, so I'm pretty happy about that. And there's also, in the appendix to the book, there's a tool and supply list there. So I list some basic tools that I recommend and use, and also optional tools and supplies, and there's links with everything there. So if you click on the link, it'll take you to a vendor somewhere that sells that particular item, so you can take a look at it. If it's something you want to purchase, and you purchase it through that link, I get paid a small commission, which is pretty awesome. So thank you in advance if you do that. Also in the book, there's a resource section that's got books listed that I recommend, magazines. It's got organizations that offer classes for boat building, kit and plan companies, places to go for support, all that kind of stuff. So the cool thing about it is I'm offering the book for free from August 15th through September 9th, 2013, if you are a subscriber to my newsletter, my monthly newsletter. So the way this will work is, for current subscribers, on August 15, 2013, I will send you an email with a link and a promo code that you can use. So when you check out to purchase the book, you'll be able to get it for free. And if you subscribe to the podcast, you're not a current subscriber, but if you go ahead and subscribe now, I will send you an email with the same information. Remember, you have to subscribe before September 9th, which is when the offer expires. If you go to hookedonwoodenboats.com/subscribe, that'll take you to the subscription page, and then you'll get the information. You can also go to hookedonwoodenboats.com/ebook1, ebook with the number 1 behind it, and that will take you to my page that has more information about the book if you would like to check that out. So I would really encourage you to get the book while it's free. I think it came out great. I spent a lot of time on it, probably a couple hundred hours or so. It's got a really nice cover. I had my graphic artist do. Like I say, it's interactive. There's lots of links that go within the book and to outside places. So if you read the electronic version or PDF version of the book, you'll be able to click on the links. And for instance, here's a kind of cool example on the chapter that talks about building methods. There's a section on carvel planking, and at the end of the section, I give you a link that takes you to the podcast episode 99, where I did an interview with Jeff Hammond, who's an instructor at the Northwest School of Wooden Boat Building, and we talked specifically about carvel planking and the ins and outs and pros and cons and all that. So it's a very interactive guide. Please get the word out. Tell your friends about it if you think they might be interested. And again, if you sign up for the newsletter before September 9th or by September 9th, you'll get the book for free. After that, the book will be priced at $4.99. Now, here's the other thing, is if you have a website and you would like to be an affiliate marketer for my book, so in other words, you would promote the book on your website, sell it for $4.99, and you get paid a commission if you sell it, send me an email and I'll give you information about the affiliate marketing program that I have. And you can email me, dan@hookedonwoodenboats.com. And that would be awesome if you wanted to do that. I'm really excited. I've got a few affiliate people that are already going to get signed up here this week, so I'm pretty excited about that. I'm not going to go into any detail about my scamp build this week other than to say I did work on it some this week. Not a whole lot because I've been focusing on getting my book done. And if you want to see updates on the scamp, you can go to hookedonwoodenboats.com/scamp. And there I talk about where I'm at in the process. I've got photographs. I'm keeping track of the cost to build it and the time it takes me to build it. All those details are there, hookedonwoodenboats.com/scamp. And then also, if you haven't already checked out my YouTube channel, if you go to youtube.com/woodenboatdan, I think I've got 8 or 9 videos up there, which is pretty fun. Check it out. I think you'll like it. And subscribe to the channel and tell your friends about it. That would be pretty cool. Also wanted to say that in the podcast show notes for this episode 100, there's a short video of Henry LePage on his first day out on his newly built boat. He's rowing around the lake, and his dad does a little video, and it's really cute. It's only like 10 seconds long, but check it out on my website, hookedonwoodenboats.com/100. Okay, we're going to move on to the 2 interviews now. The first interview with Henry LePage of Chappaqua, New York, and then we'll move into the interview with Cliff Ravenscraft of Hebron, Kentucky. So take it away, Henry. Okay, it is July 24th, 2013. I have on the phone with me Mark and Henry LePage. Welcome to the podcast, guys.
Hi.
Hi.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, you're welcome. So, Mark, your son is Henry, and he's 8 years old.
That's right.
Is that right? Yeah, and he's built a boat recently, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. Mark, I'm just curious, how did you find out about the Hooked on Wooden Boats podcast?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Cliff Ravenscraft, the podcast answer man. And when he interviewed you a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago, or at least aired it a few weeks ago or a month ago, I listened and I heard it. And when I found out that there was a Wooden Boat podcast, I was so excited. And so I started listening.
Cool, very cool. And it's the only one in the world, right?
Yeah, I know that. I looked that up. That's impressive.
Very cool. So when you heard about that, you connected it with me, Mark, and told me a little bit about your son, Henry. And, I had seen Henry's picture in WoodenBoat Magazine, but it had been a couple months ago. And so I went back and pulled out my magazines, and sure enough, here's Henry LePage. So, Henry, are you there now?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so how old are you, Henry?
I'm 8 years old.
8 years old. When's your birthday?
On October 3rd.
October 3rd, okay. And where do you live, Henry?
I live in Chappaqua, New York.
Chappaqua. Is that kind of hard to spell?
I guess.
You've been in WoodenBoat Magazine recently and some things, but tell me, how did you get interested in wooden boats, Henry?
Well, I got the bug from my grandfather, Pata, because we go up to Florida in the canals once in a while, and every single summer we go up to the St. Lawrence River. And my grandpa has like 5 boats up at the river, and he is a couple down in Florida too. So I got the bug from him because we go up there every summer, and I just love boats.
Yeah.
Cool. Now, in the St. Lawrence, where's that located, where you guys go?
That's upstate New York.
Upstate New York?
Yeah, way upstate New York on the border of Canada.
Okay, and then you also go to Florida, where you do some boating there, too, with your grandpa. Is that right, Henry?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, very
Yes.
cool. So are the boats that your grandpa has wooden boats, most of them, or some of them?
I think he doesn't have any wooden boats.
Yeah, they're all fiberglass power boats.
Okay, very good. But you love boats, huh?
And we love wooden boats.
Yeah, okay.
At the St. Lawrence River, right nearby where my parents have their house, they have the Antique Boat Museum.
Oh, okay.
And so we get a lot of opportunity to go over there and see all the boats that are over at the museum. And so we're really big fans of wooden boats.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. So, Henry, how did you get the idea that you wanted to build a wooden boat?
Well, for my birthday, I said, Dad, could I have a boat? Because he said, what do you want for your birthday? And I said, could I have a boat? And then he said, I'll think about it. And then on my birthday, he gave me some books. And the one I got my boat from was called Gavin Atkin's Ultra Simple Boat Building. So, and I built a Poorboy Skiff, even though my dad thought we were going to build a little mouse boat.
Oh, really? You like the Poorboy Skiff better?
Yes.
Now, why did you pick that one, Henry?
Because it was more boat-like, because the mouse boat had a flat front.
Oh, okay.
It didn't exactly have a real bow.
Mm-hmm. But the Poorboy Skiff had a pointed bow like a traditional boat.
Yes.
Is that right? Yeah. Okay.
Uh-huh.
Very cool. So, did you get that book for your 7th birthday or 8th birthday?
My 7th birthday.
Your 7th birthday. Very cool. And had you? How did you think you were going to build a boat, Henry? You'd never built one before, right?
No, but we got 5 days before we went up to the St. Lawrence River, my dad purchased some marine grade mahogany plywood and lumber, and we started building, and we got the hull complete enough to haul it onto our car, and then we went. I think it was on a Tuesday.
Wow. Okay. And that was when was that? How many months ago was that, or was that last year?
Yeah, that was last year.
Okay. So did you you pick this boat to build from this book, 17 Ultra Simple Boat Designs, and how long is that boat, Henry?
11'6".
11 feet 6 inches long, and so you picked that boat, and then did you think about trying to buy a kit, or you wanted to build it from scratch?
I wanted to build it from scratch.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, had you done any woodworking before that, Henry?
Yes, I had. Yes, I did, because I have my own workshop, and every single summer when we go up to the St. Lawrence River, I bring every one of my tools.
Really?
Yeah, he's a big tool collector.
Oh, wow. Very cool. So what kind of stuff do you do with the tools that you have besides build boats then, Henry?
Well, I build some model planes, and I build some helpful stuff, I help my brother build a desk for it. Because he's a ham operator, I help him build a desk for all his stuff.
Cool. Very cool. What kind of hand tools do you have?
I have a saw, I have a handsaw, I have a hammer, I have screwdrivers, most of the traditional stuff.
Okay. Very cool. So you picked this boat and decided to build it from scratch, and so you and your dad started the project at home, is that right?
Yeah, we started at home.
Yeah. So what did you do? Tell me the part that you did at home.
We did the siding, and we tried to get the bow on. Except we ran into a problem right away because we were trying to do we got two plans. We got one for the 11'6" and the 10-foot boat. So we had to put another floor on the bow, and it was hard to spring the bow into place.
Yeah, we thought we were building the 10-foot boat, and it turned out that we were building the 11'6" boat.
Mm-hmm.
Really? Okay. So you did end up with the 11'6" boat.
Right?
Yes.
Okay, but you had two different sets of plans or something like that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you got the boat started, and you took it to your grandparents' place, and then what did you do, Henry?
And then I did a little more work because my bow wasn't completely finished, except we got it finished enough to get it onto the roof of the car. And I still had to paint it.
Mm-hmm. So did your grandpa help you finish the boat then?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so how long did it take you to build the boat?
About 3 weeks and a half.
Really, that was all, huh? That was fast, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Actually, 4 weeks and a half.
Four and a half weeks, okay. So what was the hardest part of building the boat, Henry?
When we had to cut the bow when we had to get the bow together, because I had to come up with the leverage thing to get it to work.
Yeah.
Really? So how did you get it? What kind of a lever did you use, or how did you build that?
Well, we have these big clamps, and I thought if I screwed the clamp on real tight to the stem, I could pull it into place, and it worked. But it was really hard work. So
Yeah, because we were building the 11'6" boat rather than the 10-foot boat, the angles were different. And so when we tried to bring the bow up to where it belonged, it wasn't going where we wanted it to. And so we had to do a little brainstorming on how we could get that accomplished. And Henry came up with some good ideas and made it work.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool. So, what month did you finish the boat, Henry?
Like the beginning of September, like 2 days before we went home from the river.
Okay, so you finished your boat, and did you give it a name at that point?
Yes, its name is Miss Arcadia II.
Okay, and how did you come up with that name, Henry?
Because in the Wooden Boat Museum, a couple days before that, we went there and we saw the Gold Cup races, and my favorite Gold Cup racer was Miss Canada III. And we live on the road, Arcadia Park Road. So if I combine Miss Canada and Arcadia, I came up with Miss Arcadia, and I have this inflatable raft called Miss Arcadia I, and Miss Arcadia II is my wooden boat.
Very fun, very fun. So what color did you paint your boat, Henry?
Mostly blue on the outside and mostly creamish white on the inside.
Okay. And what kind of wood did you build your boat from?
Marine grade mahogany plywood.
Really? Okay, the whole thing? Were there other parts that were mahogany?
We screwed it together with some brass screws, and I think we used some lumber also.
Okay, very cool. And then, did you have a special launch day for your boat?
I christened my boat with a bottle of river water.
Oh wow! And where did you do that at?
When we were putting it into I wanted to launch it in the ramp, so we went to the boat ramp, and there was sort of a line because on that same day, my next door neighbor, Mr. Everett, he was taking his jet skis out of the water, so there was sort of a line and even though there were two ramps, there was another line on the other one, so I had to wait. And then I got my boat finally in. The back of the trailer was just touching the water, and I christened my boat. And then we took off the special what are they called?
What are you talking about?
The things that we kept the boat on the trailer with.
The straps?
The big straps, and we took those off and we pushed it into the water. And it floated beautifully.
Yeah, no water at all.
Really? Very cool. Now, is this a rowboat, Henry?
Yes, this is a rowboat.
Yeah. Will it take a little motor, too, or is it just strictly rowing?
Yeah, I could put a motor on it, and I actually have a motor, except we don't have a gas tank for it.
I see. Okay.
What kind of motor is it?
It's a 1946, I think. Scott Atwater.
Wow. That's a really antique motor, huh? Where did you get that motor, Henry?
Well, my grandfather went up to the lake house, and he brought back this really cool. And he went and he was trying to find some good stuff in it, because he really cares about selling stuff. So and he found this motor, and it was his when he was a kid, and he forgot all about it. And there was a little old rowboat that it had on it. So he threw the rowboat away, but he kept the motor, and he and I fixed it up at his house because he had the motor at his house when we fixed it up and put the propeller on it. And then we put it all together. And we put some ethanol in it and it started up, and then it shut it, and then it stopped. But that was because we didn't have the gas tank, and then we brought it to my house, and now it's sitting in the corner of a garage gathering dust.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Got to get a gas tank for it, huh? How many horsepower is it, Henry?
I think 15. I'm not sure.
Okay, very cool. So where do you keep your boat when you're not using it?
Up at the St. Lawrence River, my grandpa, he has this big barn, and that's where he keeps all his boats. And sometimes he keeps a friend's boat there, but that's only sometimes. So I kept my boat all the way in the back, on top of an old, I'm not sure what year it is, but an old Chevrolet pickup truck.
Oh, wow. So you keep it at your grandpa's and use it when you go see him, huh?
Uh-huh.
Very fun. Very fun. So, Henry, tell me how you got your information in WoodenBoat Magazine. You were in there 2 times.
Well, the first time, my brother, for my 8th birthday, he helped me get it into the magazine. And my dad put it into the magazine, and then when one of the editors read it, she said, "Why don't we put another one of him in it, because he's only 7 years old." So I was put on the cover of a little magazine inside the big magazine.
Okay, so first you sent a picture of your completed boat to WoodenBoat Magazine, and they featured it in the launching section. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Right,
Yeah.
but
And that
his brother,
was
his brother James submitted that as a surprise to Henry. Henry didn't know about that.
Oh, okay, very cool. And that was magazine number 230. And then when the editor saw that, he decided to do another article in the. There's a section called "Getting Starting in Boats." And this was called Getting Started Stories, and that was in magazine number 232.
Mm-hmm.
And what's that article about in there?
It was about how it was basically the story of how I got my boat.
Okay, very fun, very fun. Wow, that's pretty cool, Henry. Are you going to build another boat sometime?
Well, me and my friend think we should make a little boat building business and make some money off them.
Cool, that would be fun. That would be really cool. And then also I read that you're interested in being in the Coast Guard. Tell me about that.
Well, in my second magazine that I was in my last paragraph, I said, Mariah, the editor that interviewed me, she said, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And I said, "I want to be a Coast Guard so I could be on boats my whole life."
Fun. And then you got to visit a Coast Guard station recently. Tell me about that.
Well, we went up to Long Island and we went to Kings Point Coast Guard, the Coast Guard station, and that was on the campus of the what was it called?
The Merchant Marine Academy.
The Merchant Marine Academy.
Oh wow, was that pretty fun, Henry?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. What did you do while you were there?
My brother and I got to start up the engines on the Coast Guard boat, and I got a little pack of like magazines and like boating safety stuff. And I got a little pin and a Coast Guard flag.
Wow, very fun. And then I heard that you also got to go to the Wooden Boat show in Mystic Seaport, Connecticut. Is that right?
Uh-huh.
And tell me about that experience.
That was really fun because Robin Jettinghoff is another editor, and she was and she was the one who got me into launchings. Mm-hmm. And she was there, and we thought she would just say hi, except she spent the whole entire day with us.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. So what kind of stuff did you see there, Henry?
We saw a lot of whaling boats, and we saw the Morgan.
And what's the Morgan, the Charles Morgan?
Uh-huh.
That's a big whaling boat, is it, that was built a long time ago?
It's the whaling ship that held some of the whaling boats.
I see. Very fun. So you had a great time at that show, I bet.
Uh-huh.
What was your favorite boat there, Henry?
Probably the little hydroplanes.
Oh, wow. Okay. Did you see him racing?
No, they didn't race them that day.
Okay.
They were in the storage building, and we got to go to the storage building and see them.
Fun. Very fun. So what's your next project, Henry?
We're gonna fix up the old boat motor that we have in the corner of our garage.
Okay, very good. And then Miss Arcadia II, is she completely done, or do you have any work left to do on her?
I think we have a chip in the paint on the inside floor, so we got to fix that up, and we still have to put the lettering and numbering on it.
Okay, very good. And then she's all done, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Now, do you keep her on a trailer, Henry?
I don't have a trailer for her, except when we went to bring her to the boat ramp to put her in. We used my grandfather's I think 15-foot 15-foot Boston Whalers trailer.
I see. Well, I really appreciate you guys being on the podcast today. Is there anything else you'd like to add, Mark?
No, I think that's about it. That's the story.
Mm-hmm.
Very fun. How about you, Henry? Anything else you want to say to all the people listening that love wooden boats?
Not really.
Okay.
You think other kids should do it?
I guess.
If other kids are interested, would there be a way for them to contact you guys?
Sure. You could contact me. You could send an email to my email address. It's mark@entrearchitect.com.
Okay. Can you spell that for us?
Sure. It's entrearchitect.com.
Very cool. Well, I really appreciate you guys being on the podcast today, and have a great day. And if I get out to the East Coast, I'm definitely going to look you guys up, and I want to see your boat, Henry.
That'd be great.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you guys take care.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Up next is the interview with Cliff Ravenscraft, the podcast answer man. Take it away, Cliff. Okay, I have on the phone with me today Cliff Ravenscraft from Hebron, Kentucky. Is that right, Cliff? Is that where you're from?
Yes, sir. Northern Kentucky, just outside of Cincinnati.
Okay, well, welcome to the podcast today. It's great having you on the show, Cliff.
I'm glad to be here, Dan. I'll tell you, I'm so excited. I talk about you non-stop. Are you aware of that?
No, are you serious?
I'm surprised you don't get just the constant flow of emails of people asking you questions and say, I heard about you from Cliff. Yeah, absolutely. I talk about you every single time my podcasting A to Z class comes around, 20 to 35 students each time. And people are talking about their brands and what they should do and this and that. And I'm always like, here's what you do. You need to go over and look at hookedonwoodenboats.com. And this guy is the example to follow.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So for those listening today, Cliff Ravenscraft is also known as a podcast answer man. And just to give everybody a little history, I started listening to podcasts in 2009. My son got me hooked on it. And I started listening to Dan Miller first, Cliff. And weren't you interviewed by Dan Miller at some point?
I was interviewed for him for one of his telephone seminars, I believe, and I also interviewed him on my show, which maybe was out there as well.
Yeah, so I think I heard about you through Dan, and then I started listening to your podcast in 2010 and a bunch of other podcasts, and I loved it so much I decided, you know what, I got to do this. I got to start a podcast. And I piddled around for the next year and never really got off. I think I did a couple little recordings, but then I had no clue what to do with them. It was too overwhelming. So I'm like, okay, I got to sign up for this class that Cliff is giving, which was a September 2011 A to Z class. So did that, and Cliff took me through the process, and I got the podcast launched. And Cliff, you did an amazing job. It was phenomenal.
Well, thanks, Dan. Like I said, you're one of my star students as far as I'm concerned, and somebody who is podcasting as close to what I feel is the real true joy of podcasting, as far as doing it for the value of enhancing your own life and enhancing the lives of others through shared passions. And I don't know if we'll get into your story of how you came up with Hooked on Wooden Boats, but I tell you, I've told the story many times, Dan, and I love the story.
Well, I figured you kind of remembered that, but do you want to tell your version of it, Cliff?
I'll tell you my version. You tell me how much I've embellished it over the years.
Okay.
All right. So here's the deal. Dan and I were having this conversation in our online discussion forums about what topic he was going to do his podcast about. And he finally came out one day, and he's writing in the forums, and in the forum you put, Cliff, I've narrowed it down. I'm absolutely positive it's one of these two topics. It's either going to be small business coaching, or it's going to be personal, related to personal financing or personal finance coaching. And here is the list of reasons why these are the two that I'm most qualified to do a podcast about. And I read through it. And Dan, if I were looking to hire you, that would have been the greatest resume in the world. And I looked at it, I was like, there's no question, Dan. You don't have to convince me any further. You undoubtedly are knowledgeable about both of these subjects. But here's the thing. I read your description of why these are the two podcast topics for you, word for word. I did not miss a single period or exclamation mark. In fact, there was no exclamation marks. There were just periods. One thing I don't see in anything that you wrote is any sort of passion for the topic. You don't write that in there as being one of your reasons for one of these topics being the podcast that you would do. And here's the story that I tell. I said that you wrote back and says, gosh, Cliff, you know what? I never really thought about it all that much, but to be honest with you, I don't have much passion for those things. I won't go back and tell you what I usually say, but just in case somebody in your day job might listen, but I'll just say this. I said, do the world a favor, Dan, and don't do a podcast about either of those topics. Mm-hmm. Find something that you're passionate about. Is there something that brings true joy to your life, something that really excites you? Now, you wrote back in the forums, and I happened to be out doing something. I was probably in line at Chipotle, and I pull up my little iPhone, and I read your response, and I'm sitting there, and of course, super small text, right? And I read it, and it's like, gosh, Cliff, you know what? I do have two passions, and one is mountain biking, and the other one is wooden boots. And I'm like, wooden boots? And I put my phone away, and I'm thinking, wooden boots. Does this guy, does he have this thing for the Dutch people and their wooden shoes? I'm thinking, seriously? It's like, okay, I totally believe in narrowing down the niche of the focus of your podcast. But I think I'm going to, when I get back to the studio, I'm going to write back, and I'm going to push him towards mountain biking, because wooden boots might just be a little bit too much. So I'm actually, I get to my desk and I hit reply, and I'm sitting here telling you all the reasons why you should go with mountain biking. And then I look to make sure that I quoted everything and stuff like that. And it's like, oh, that says wooden boats. That's different. And of course, there's already plenty out there on biking and stuff like that. And there's nothing wrong with having a podcast where there's other competition out there in the podcasting space. In fact, that can be a great thing.
Right.
But man, wooden boats. I started doing a Google search, and I found there's a Wooden Boat Association. And I found another podcast that had over 100 episodes that was all about boating. And there were a couple episodes related to and devoted to wooden boats. And I'm thinking, I think Dan's onto something. If he has a passion for this might be something I should encourage him to do. And that's what I did. And so here you are, what is it, episode 100 now, mm-hmm. and you've got hooked on wooden boats, and you're Wooden Boat Dan today. And that's the story I tell. Now, how far off am I?
No, you're really close. I would say the only detail you might have missed is that I probably said road biking and mountain biking, but you said mountain biking. But other than that, that's very, very accurate, Cliff. In fact, today I went back to the forum and read through the dialogue just to clarify in my own mind what had been said.
I forgot all about that. I could have done that.
Yeah. So that was pretty cool. It's just like it put me back at that. It's like, because when I sent you that, and I think then you responded and said, well, Dan, I don't see any passion in this. What are you really passionate about? And I'm thinking, well, there's two things. Other than my faith in God is my first passion, but as far as hobbies go, wooden boats and bicycling, those are it. I love those things. I could talk all day about them. I could research them and do all this stuff, but I'm thinking, well, I can't do a podcast about that. You know how your mind kind of plays tricks with you like that.
Absolutely. Now, let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Do you think that if you would have done small business coaching, for personal finance, knowing how much hard work you've put into this. You know how much work it takes to put out an episode,
right,
and all the show notes and stuff.
Yeah.
Do you think you would actually have reached 100 episodes of either of those other two topics?
Oh man, it would have been really hard, Cliff. If I had, it would have been just painful. Because, you know, like you say, it's work what you do, but it's so much fun that it doesn't feel like work. And I know if I had done the personal finance, accounting type of stuff, that it would have really felt like work every week and drudgery. And so, in fact, I might have told you that I had started a blog on personal finance and called Dr. Dollar. And
I remember that.
yeah, I published maybe 150 posts over about a 1-year period. I started out doing them every day, and then I kind of slowed down a little bit, did about 150, and then it's like, okay, I'm done with this. That's it. I was just racking my brain for what I'm going to talk about, and wasn't getting much traction as far as, you know, people reading the blog, and I just wasn't having fun with it. But, you know, I can honestly say with this wooden boat thing, Cliff, you know, when I first started this, it's like I did the first 2 shows, I just talked about my own wooden boat experiences. Then the 3rd show, I did an interview, and then I thought, I'm done. What am I going to do now? There's nothing else to say, right?
Except that there's 100 episodes out there now.
Yeah.
So how did you get over that hurdle? How did you get to episode 4? What turned on the light on future content?
Well, you know, I've been in the wooden boat world for long enough to know quite a few names around the Seattle area, and you know, the Center for Wooden Boats here in Seattle and in Port Townsend, the Northwest Maritime Center and the Wooden Boat Foundation. And I had visited a couple of wooden boat builders in the area, so I just thought, you know what, I'm going to start calling these guys. And so as I started calling them, what I found out is they were very happy. They love to talk about what they love, right? I mean,
yeah,
that's what people want to do. If they're passionate about something and you call and say, hey, would you talk about this? They're like, are you serious? So as I've gotten into it, Cliff, every person I meet, then I find out 10 more names. And now the world has gotten so big, this wooden boat world to me, that it's like I kind of had to slow down as far as recording interviews because I was getting so far ahead. It's like I don't want to get too far ahead. You know, I've got 3 or 4 in the bag because I like to do them a little bit ahead of time because most of the shows are interviews. But it's like now, especially now that I'm set up for phone interviews, which I just started doing that about a month ago, so I can talk to people around the world. So it's like the universe is huge now compared to what it was.
Hey, do you mind me asking? So you're doing phone interviews. I know you called this a phone interview. We're doing Skype to Skype. Yeah. How are you recording those? Are you using either Pamela or Call Recorder?
No, I'm just recording them through my little Behringer recorder. I got the cheap one where you have to unplug the power cord. And so I'm going from that right into my Roland R05 and using an SM58 mic.
Okay, so you're doing the mix minus deal.
I'm doing the mix minus, yeah.
Oh, Dan, I'm so proud of you, man. That's awesome.
Yeah, doing it through my MacBook Pro.
That's great, man.
Yeah, well, you know, I think it was March of 2012, I emailed you and said, Cliff, I want to get set up to do some phone interviews. So you sent me some diagrams and said, watch this video. And so I did that, and I bought the equipment, and then it just sat in my drawer. I was just intimidated for about a year. And finally, about 2 months ago, it's like, all right, I'm going to pull that out of the drawer and start doing this. So I did, and it works great, Cliff. What a blast.
That's wonderful. And it opens up the world of opportunities. And so you said telephone interviews. Have you actually had somebody where they're on the telephone and you Skype to dial out to the telephone? Yeah.
I dial from Skype, and I just do it I ask them to use a landline if they can.
Yeah.
I don't even deal with them using Skype because, you know, it's more technical. Unless somebody's used to using it all the time, it can be intimidating. And the recording quality has been excellent. So I got to interview the director of research at WoodenBoat Magazine. She's been there for 20 years, which was really awesome because that's, WoodenBoat Magazine started in 1974, and that was kind of the resurgence of the whole wooden boat thing starting in the 70s, because boats had were being started building them in fiberglass. And so I got to interview her, and then she referred me to another guy who's been building boats back on the East Coast in Brooklyn, Maine. And what I really want to do, Cliff, is I got this idea from your show where you've got Eric Fisher as a correspondent. What I want to do is get correspondents from around the world, maybe 6 people, like Australia, England, different places around the world that I can talk to maybe twice a year and get an update on what's happening in their world with wooden boats.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I'm really excited about that. Yeah, and in fact, the other thing I'm going to do here in July, first week of July, is there's a big wooden boat festival. It's actually, wooden boat show that's put on by WoodenBoat Magazine at Mystic Seaport in Connecticut, which is the biggest show on the East Coast, I'm pretty sure. It's been going for 20-some years. I'm going to find somebody from WoodenBoat Magazine, hopefully, that attends that show, and then we're going to talk about it when they get back from the show and do that as a recording for the podcast.
That's excellent.
Yes.
You happen to have the best show notes, the most intriguing show notes of any podcast that I like when I go to the website and look, and it has everything to do with the photos there. Do you personally go and interview these people face to face whenever you have the opportunity?
Yeah.
Are you taking these photos?
I probably 80% of the photos are mine.
Wow.
Yeah, and I'm actually hoping to produce a wooden boat calendar this year for the first time. So I'm kind of collecting my best photos. I'm going to do some kind of a print-on-demand thing and offer a calendar at the end of the year for 2014.
That is that is one of the coolest, most creative ideas I thought that I've heard of. That's awesome.
Yeah, so
I want to buy one.
Are you serious?
I definitely put me down for the first order. Whatever, it doesn't matter what the price is. I'll buy one.
They're going to be pretty expensive, Cliff. I think like $500 maybe. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, you put me down for one, Dan.
Okay, seriously, cool. I appreciate it.
It'll be a business expense for me because I'll just show everybody. See, this is what you can do. These are the kind of products you can create. I love that.
Yeah, it's very cool. And then you should get my first ebook that I'm writing, which is going to be a guide for someone who's building a wooden boat for the first time.
Oh, I like that idea.
Yeah, it's going to step you through the process of deciding what type of boat you should build, how long it's going to take, what it's going to cost, what kind of a shop you need. Should you buy a kit? Should you build it from scratch? Where do you get the design or the plans? That whole thing. How much time do you want to spend on it? Because there's a lot of decisions to make when you build a boat. And, I've done it enough. I'm building my 6th boat now, which is like one every 7 years if you go back to 1972 when I built my first pram. But I've stepped up the pace in recent years. And so, I've learned a lot about that. And I think it'll be a helpful guide.
So, Dan, I know this is you interviewing me and everything, but I hope you don't mind me asking you questions.
No, ask me some questions.
I'm super intrigued. I've got to ask you. So, you're so deeply involved now in the wooden boat community, and I just want to know, prior to launching Hooked on Wooden Boats, the podcast and website and blog with all this amazing content on it, where you're going out and interviewing these people, taking these pictures, thinking about creating calendars, which is going to be awesome. Prior to starting this podcast, how involved were you as far as time and effort? Not passion for it. It sounds to me like you've always had this passion, but how much time were you devoting to wooden boats prior to the launch of this podcast?
Let's see. I built my first real wooden boat over a 5-year period from 92 to 97. And so during that time, I would go to the Wooden Boat Festival in Seattle once a year, and then I would talk to local suppliers and buy parts and do research about how to build a boat. So, not a lot, Cliff. I mean, it was mainly limited to going to 2 boat shows a year and building a couple boats.
Okay, so you were still involved.
I was involved, yeah. Mm-hmm.
But the podcast has certainly enhanced it, I guess. That's where I was going. I was just wanting to know that with you creating a weekly podcast and doing all these interviews, how has it enhanced your enjoyment of this hobby? Or has see, here's the deal. Some people say, I don't know if I really want to do this because some things are just meant to be a hobby, and if you start doing things that you might monetize later, it becomes work, and then it's not as an enjoyable experience anymore. How's that been for you?
No, it's not that at all, Cliff. I mean, I've learned so much and interviewed so many fascinating people. It's just mind-boggling. I mean, if somebody starts, like somebody that's not in the WoodenBoat community, like a family or friend, if they start asking me about my podcast, I have a hard time stopping talking about it.
Yeah.
It's incredible. I mean, I'm having so much fun with it, and the community of people is amazing. I mean, I interviewed a guy last year that had been building boats in his garage on Samish Island, Washington, for the last 50 years. The mold that he had in his garage that he was building the boats on, he had paid 50 cents for 50 years ago from the USA Plywood Association.
Wow.
I meet people that sail tall ships that are made of wood that are 150 feet long around the world, and everything is done in the traditional manner. All the rigging is traditional. All the terms are what they used 100 years ago. I mean, I find it so fascinating, Cliff, that it's totally not like work at all.
And I'm the same way. Obviously, people warn me, gosh, Cliff, if you go into podcasting full time as your career, you may find that you don't enjoy podcasting as much, and that's not the truth. I mean, here I am. I'm now the podcasting director for the #1 industry leading conference for social media and podcasting and blogging, and so it certainly has done the same thing for me. It's got me right up there to the top of interacting with the greatest peers in this industry of podcasting. And it sounds like it's doing the same for you.
Oh, so, it really is.
That's exciting.
And what's really fun is when I go to Port Townsend, which is Seattle and Port Townsend are kind of the 2 WoodenBoat centers in Washington State. Or actually, for the West Coast, they're pretty big. I go to Port Townsend now, and I know a ton of people, and I am welcomed into the community there. Everybody wants to show me what they're doing. They say, hey, here's a guy you should interview over here. Why don't you talk to this guy? So it's kind of like going home when I go over there. It's pretty fun.
Yeah.
So, no, I'm having probably more fun than when I started, Cliff.
That's great to hear. That is great to hear.
Yeah, and part of that, too, is like I'm sure you experience over the years as you get the technical part of it down, so you don't have to fuss with that as much, and you can just focus on the content and doing what you enjoy. That's what really makes it cool. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So hey, I really appreciate you being on the show today, Cliff. Episode 100. I want to thank you again for your A to Z class. If it hadn't been for that, I probably wouldn't be doing this. It was very awesome, and I just wanted to give you credit for helping me get this little baby launched in September of 2011.
Well, I just want to congratulate you, Dan, and I'm not just blowing smoke or anything like that. I really do. I talk about you nonstop all the time, and I couldn't be more thrilled for you, and I look forward to continuing to follow your journey because I know that the best days are yet to come. And I know this from personal experience.
Cool. Well, thanks, Cliff. And I'm hoping we get to meet in person someday. I don't know if you ever get to Seattle. It's funny, there's not much podcasts like PodCamp and that stuff. It seems like it's not happening up in this area. But anyway, thanks again, Cliff, for being on the show, and we'll talk again soon.
Thanks, Dan.
Okay. Take care. Thank you so much, Henry and Mark and Cliff, for being part of episode 100 of Hooked on Wooden Boats. It was really fun chatting with you guys, and I know the listeners are going to enjoy it a lot. For those of you listening, don't forget you can get my ebook for free, between now and September 9th, 2013 by subscribing to my newsletter. Or if you've already subscribed, you'll get an email on August 15th with the details about how to get the book for free. If you haven't subscribed, go to hookedonwoodenboats.com/subscribe or go to hookedonwoodenboats.com/ebook1 for more information. Also, the Port Townsend Wooden Boat Festival is coming up September 6th through the 8th. I will be there all 3 days. Actually, I'm going to get there Thursday. I'll be there till Sunday. On Friday from 12 to 1, I'll be doing a presentation titled Build Your First Wooden Boat. And Saturday from 1:15 to 2:15, the same presentation. Both of those are in the Explorer Room of the Northwest Maritime Center. I'd love it if you could attend and introduce yourself if I haven't met you before. It should be a lot of fun. I'm going to basically talk about my book that I've just written and the process of deciding what and how to build your first wooden boat. So it's fun stuff. I hope to see you there. I hope you've enjoyed episode 100 of Hooked on Wooden Boats, and I think I got another 100 episodes in me somehow. So thanks for your support. I really appreciate it. Thanks for listening. Tell your family and friends and other wooden boat addicts about the show and about the free ebook and all that fun stuff. Have a great week. Keep the bright side up and the barnacled side down. Wooden Boat Dan over and out. God bless.